Are you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And we're going to talk about our New Year's resolutions here, roughly 2 weeks after New Year's. Sorry we've been away for so long. We're back here in the home studio, also known as our basement. We just wanted to kind of go through and enjoy the holidays and just reset a little bit and enjoy some family time. I also threw my back out. Danielle's been sick, and it's just been a mess of a little bit of time here. So it feels good to be back, and we're going to talk to you about what our goals are for the year, along with some other things that we have either been doing or thinking about over the last little while. Before we dive into today's content, I just want to encourage you to either leave us a review for us on Apple Podcast or your podcast player of choice, or send us a question. We really appreciate questions. We love answering them, and we need some to answer. So please go ahead. If you have any financial questions related to budgeting, send them on over. We'll be happy to answer them. Even if you don't want it on the show, we will answer it, and we will email you back, and we'll try to help you out as much as we can. But with that said, let's move on to today's content, which is our New Year's resolutions.
Okay, so we'll start off with our first one here. First one, we really want to make our money work more for us. And you've probably heard us say something like this at some point, but we've been doing a lot of hoarding of money in our checking and savings account, savings mainly. And while that's not a bad thing, we always advocate for 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside, which for us is around $15,000 to $20,000, depending on what's going on. But going above that, really, I would only advocate for that if you have extenuating circumstances, like you have a kid on the way or some big expense that you know is coming up that you really want to plan for so that you can cash flow it rather than take out a loan or do credit. So there are certain reasons, but I feel like we've been hoarding a little bit more than what we needed to.
I'll agree with that. I'll hold it. I mean, there's reasons why we've held on to a little extra money in there, but I don't know if they're good reasons or if there's a way to spend it better. It's a kind of a conflict, but I think that after we go through tax season here, that savings is going to go back to what we traditionally have had for the past however many years.
Yeah. So Nate brought up one of the reasons that we've been kind of hoarding a little bit. We've had a bit of, I guess, a lot of unknowns that have cropped up. We had our home renovations that we discussed this past summer. I've had a lot of work travel over the past several months, and I've been paying out of pocket and then getting reimbursed. But that's put a bit of a strain on our budgeting because it's kind of an unknown because you're not sure how much you're spending or exactly when you're going to get reimbursed. Also, of course, there's the whole new tax code, and we don't really know what our taxes are going to look like here in the next month or so. And then to throw a cherry on top of it all, the government has shut down, and I'm actually affected. I'm a contractor, so I am getting paid and I'm allowed to work, but there was a little bit of unknown around that, and still is, actually.
Yeah, and if the shutdown continues longer, we don't know how long that contract is prepaid for, so we could be we could be down to a single income relatively soon. We don't really know. We don't know what situation her contracting company's in, but that's something that we have to kind of prepare for as well.
So there is a lot of unknowns, and there has been for the past several months to a year here, and it's really made us just hoard. I think because we're paranoid and we want to make sure we always have that cash on hand. Again, it's not a bad thing, but I've just lately been struggling with the balance of how much do you hoard and how much do you go ahead and put towards your debts or put towards your retirement, because you want that money to grow. I mean, paying down debt, you're paying less interest and saving yourself loads of money into the future. And of course, putting into retirement, you're getting it into the stock market and your money is making more money for you. So there has to be a balance between building up a bigger crash fund and making sure you're paying down debts and saving for retirement. So we just kind of want to figure out a better balance for that.
Yeah, and I think once we get past February-ish, when we traditionally file our taxes, that's kind of going to be where we know what we need to do, and if we need to adjust our incomes with what is it, W-4s or W-2s to figure out how much money we owe, we'll do that. But for right now, we're going to sit on that money just for a little bit longer. Another month's not going to kill us, and then we can kind of go forward with that. On that same vein, we also really want to pay down our second mortgage. So if you've been a listener for a little while, we've gone through and we took out a second mortgage to redo our kitchen and also to redo our bathroom. Now, that second mortgage was for a total of $30,000, and we got it last August, so it's been with us for roughly about a half year here, not even. And we've paid off over $8,000 on that. So we have roughly $22,000 left on there. I personally would like to get that down around $5,000 by this time next year. That's quite a stretch. That's a lot of money putting down on that. But if we can do that, I think we're going to be in much better shape. And it's also going to start moving the bar, because when you start paying off debt, it kind of starts rolling into more and more desire to pay off debt more quickly. And hopefully, if we can get that started, we'll really kind of take that up and really want to pay it off as quickly as possible.
So another thing that we really want to make a commitment on is staying on budget. We have been a little back and forth this past year, and you've probably heard it in some of our recent podcasts. And we've been really trying hard, and we've done pretty good, I would say, in the last couple months here. And so I guess our resolution is just to stick with that, to continue to do pretty good. The one thing we've done really terrible at, though, is if you go back a few episodes, we had agreed to try out putting aside a portion of money each month, and we would use that basically to distribute our miscellaneous expenses through the course of the year. So we would use that money that we set aside to pay things like bigger ticket items like car insurance or vet bills or
even birthday, Christmas presents, those
things
type
like
of
that.
things.
And we started putting that money away, but we started at a really bad time where we started around the November time frame, and that's when we have our vets. That's when we pay our car insurance.
We pay our life insurance.
Yeah.
We pay Christmas and birthdays, because both our dads, my sister, all have birthdays in December. So a lot of stuff hits all right at that time, and it was probably a bad time to choose to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, we've gotten off track on that, and I would like to give it a good go to see if it's something that works for us. So we're probably going to reset on that, and maybe we'll do another episode to see how that goes once we really dig into it.
On the plus side, I've yet to go over budget since our last podcast, which is about a month old at this point. We apologize for that, by the way.
He got a talking to, and I sat him down and put him in timeout and everything. So,
well, we had some things that we decided to purchase, and with the agreement that we're not going to be going over budget. So we've kept to that, and we're going to continue to stick to that.
I would also like to start putting a little bit more in retirement. Nate just talked about paying down that second mortgage, which is also super important. And again, this comes back to balance. It's a balance between putting into retirement consistently and making sure you're paying down your debt. So I'm not actually sure what the perfect sweet spot is on this, but I want to start contributing. We're both maxing out our Roths, by the way. But I want to put a little bit more into my work 401k. Not a lot, but just start inching that upwards, just for inflation, as you get a cost of living raise, make sure you're increasing a little bit your retirement savings as well. So that's something I'd like to do.
Yeah, and I potentially want to go through and look at opening up a 403B because I'm a public employee. I work for a school district. I'm a teacher. I don't have a 401k option, but I do have a 403B, which is essentially the same thing, but for public sector employees. So I'm going to look at possibly opening one, maybe just putting like $50 to $100 a pay in there just to get the ball rolling, just to get something started. But I have to investigate the options to see if it's worth doing that, or if we just starting putting a lot more into Danielle's 401k where we have pretty decent options.
Personal kind of resolution for me is I'd like to learn a little bit more, at least begin to learn more about investment and the stock market in general. So I know what I'm investing in. Vanguard and T. Rowe Price, they do a lot for us, but I just want to have a better handle on that. So that's something I just want to start to research a bit more myself.
That's not something I'm interested in at all, but that's okay because we each have our own goals. I think a combined goal that we have is we really do want to donate more money. We want to give to charity a lot more and participate in that more. We did a decent job of it, but we weren't giving away as much as we really should. And I think we really want to up that as well. So just in this last couple minutes here, we've cost ourselves a lot of money because we want to increase a whole bunch of things, but that's okay because they're all building towards things in the future, either for us or for others, and that's important.
Really what it's doing is trying to figure out how we want to use that extra money. How do we want to allocate it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And then the last thing that we really want to take a look at is going out and with the podcast, producing a lot more content. We really want to start writing more articles, producing videos, and the podcast itself. We want to get that out on a regular, every other week kind of basis with less breaks. This last break we had was a long one, but we had one not too far behind that, it feels like. So we want to get back on a regular schedule with that, along with producing more content. So that's kind of where we're at with our resolutions. There's 7 of them there. We'll do our best to stick with them. I tend to not think of things as New Year's resolutions anymore. I kind of think of them as yearly themes. And my personal yearly theme is the theme of production. I want this year to be the year of production where I go through and make stuff and create things, either woodworking, either digital through YouTube for my students or through this podcast. So that's kind of where I'm going to put a lot of my effort because that's what I'm really interested in for this year.
I'm probably just going to continue to be cheap.
That's fine. And that's okay. But your focus that you want to look at on a personal goal is to look at stock market and investing in those things and to better understand what exactly goes on there.
So before we wrap up, there's a couple other kind of random things we wanted to mention here. First of all, I said earlier that we were affected by the shutdown, and thankfully less so than a lot of other people. But it's really just brought to light that need for a crash fund. As I'm hearing about it and, just hearing all the awful stories about people who aren't in as good a situation as us, I just keep thinking about how necessary and how needed at least just any crash fund, no matter how little or how much it is, how helpful that can be to you when something like this happens. And, it's on the back of our minds because, there's no guarantee that I'll continue to get paid or that I'll continue to have work. So we are grateful to have that crash fund set aside in case anything does happen. It's not fun to use it, but it is comforting to know that we wouldn't have to go into like our retirement or take out a loan or anything like that. So I just wanted to emphasize that need for you to really have something set aside and savings so that you don't have to go to drastic measures right away.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to have. It's good practice to get in because that relieves pressure that you may not have to experience or you don't want to experience otherwise. So if you're in a position to do it, great. And if you're not in a position, start figuring out how you can get a plan together to get in the position where you can start planning those things out and start saving money to be able to pay in case of emergency situations, which the shutdown, things like that are. I think one of the things that the shutdown helps show us is that even if you have a government job, which is usually very stable, very reliable, you're still at the whim. It's not a permanent thing. It can always go away. So it's important to make sure you account for that and that you're not reliant on other people for your things. You're reliant on yourself and that you can go through and do that. And that's not trying to knock anybody who doesn't have it set up or anything like that. It's fine. Very often in our life, we did not have that set up at the beginning of our marriage. But we've gone through, we've worked on it, and we're in a position where we have that emergency fund set up, and we are okay for several months if something terrible were to happen, like loss of a job or something along those lines.
And finally, we wanted to let you guys know that there was another decision that took place over the past couple months here. We actually decided to switch banks, and we've been with actually Bank of America for a really long time now. Since we got married.
You've been with them before we get married because when we got engaged, she went to Texas to work on our master's program. Then I moved out there. We wanted to go with a national bank because it was just easier to not have to change banks every time we moved because we knew we would be moving a lot. So we went with Bank of America. We had Bank of America in Texas. We had Bank of America in Delaware. We had Bank of America in Maryland, and for a little while in Pennsylvania. So we had Bank of America who had us pretty well covered for a while, but we're not planning on moving anywhere. We're not planning on changing banks at all. So we wanted to try to find if there is better options out there. Because while Bank of America is a big giant bank and has stuff everywhere, the rates that they pay, the charges that or the fee, should I say, that they charge you, are rather high, and the interest that you get is very low. So we look for other options.
So we actually ended up choosing Capital One, which is a national bank as well. It's not a local or regional one, but it actually appealed to us for a couple reasons. I have been using them for my credit card for the last probably 15 years. I think I started with Capital One credit card when I was at the end of high school. So I've been with them for a long time and never had any issues. I've in fact had a couple really good experiences with them. And so I was going off of that experience, but also we saw that they were offering a 2% interest savings account. So we were only in our Bank of America savings account, we were only getting like 0.2% or something, which not a huge deal because you don't want to be using a savings account as an investment strategy. Again, savings account is for your crash fund or that sort of thing. It's not for investing or trying to gain money. But at the same time, if it's sitting there and you can have better, then why not? So that was a big selling point too for us.
Absolutely. And just as a quick math thing, 2% doesn't sound like a lot, but if you take 0.2% and multiply it by $15,000, that's $30 worth of interest every year. Whereas if you go to the 2% that Capital One offers, that's $300 of interest a year. So you're making $270 by doing nothing. That's our crash fund. That's money that just sits there no matter what happens. That's just emergency money. So that's $270 of free money that we have just because we change banks.
So that was a big selling point for us. And one of the main reasons we decided to do it. Nate also mentioned high fees. And while we don't really use Bank of America for any of the things that would incur fees, it's still nice to have a bank that has less fees, so if we ever had to use stuff, like it wouldn't cost us an arm and a leg. So, we had a couple of reasons, nothing too big of a deal. But we just felt like it was time for a change, and we're happy to be getting a little more money out of our savings account, and we will keep you guys updated and let you know how it goes.
Yeah. And also one other thing, we had to switch money over, and by doing that, they gave us a $200 bonus just for switching. So again, this year we're going to make $500 by switching banks, just to switch banks. So it was a good experience for us thus far. We'll see how it works. We're not even a month into it. We still have our Bank of America account open because we're still finalizing paychecks and making sure everything's switched out of there before we close that down. But speaking of closing down, I think we're just about done on topics today. But Danielle's giving me the hold on 1 second finger. She has something else very important she has to say.
No, I actually want to ask you guys something. We went through and told you all of our New Year's resolutions. I actually would really like you guys to send us some emails and let us know what your budgeting resolutions are for this year. So we're really interested in hearing from you and what you want out of 2019. So please send us some emails and let us know what you're planning on doing this year when it comes to budgeting and finance.
And do you know the best way to send us an email is to go to budgetcouple.com and click on the contact page, and you can type in an email right there. It will go right to our inbox and you can contact us immediately. So that's all it is for our first show of 2019. So that's going to wrap it up for our first episode of 2019. We'll be back in 2 weeks with our next episode. Thanks for joining us, and we hope that you had a wonderful new year and that all of your goals for this year come true. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, drop us a line. We'll be happy to get in contact with you, and have a wonderful rest of your day, night, or whatever you're doing listening to this.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.